Hi, and welcome back to PDA UK. In this episode, I'm going to be looking at pathological demand avoidance specifically and what the traits are that accompany it. So as I say, welcome back to PDA UK. As I said, I'm going to be looking in this week's episode at the traits that are associated with pathological demand avoidance. Now, those who've been with me for a while will know I did a video on this a long while back. One of the first videos I did. And the reason I want to redo it is just because obviously over time I've learned so much more and can put so much more into this and more information and detail. The other is that there were a couple of errors in there that I've now learned were errors. The main one being that originally I thought, I was under the impression, I was told that pathological demand avoidance and oppositional defiant disorder were the same thing. Basically it was sort of, as things get renamed as time goes on. That is not the case. And you may recall I did an episode on the differences between pathological demand avoidance and oppositional defiant disorder. Please do check that out. It's well worth a watch. So I wanted to make sure that, you know, the information I'm giving is as accurate and up to date as possible. So I thought I'd redo this video because it's a question a lot of people have and a lot of people are confused by. And part of it is that PDA seems to be considered to be a rarity. So when you hear it described in the media and stuff like that, it's often called a rare form of autism. And that's my experience. I mean, statistically, that's the case because only 30% of the country in the UK recognise that PDA is a thing. So here where I live in Devon, it's not recognised. You won't ever get a diagnosis of pathological demand avoidance. What we have is a diagnosis of autism. And then in the notes, it says the pathological demand avoidance strategies will help. And that's their way of getting it in there without overtly diagnosing it. The result is that, of course, it appears to be a very rare form of autism. And in my experience, that's not the case. I have come across so many people since I started doing this and running the group on Facebook who have kids that they believe are PDA, or that aren't even aware of what PDA is. And when you show them these traits, they go, oh, that's my kid, which is exactly what happened to us. When someone first put me on a PDA, it was actually a CAMS worker, funnily enough, even though they don't diagnose it here. It was a CAMS worker that said, actually, what you're looking at is PDA. Here's some information on it. And it was like reading a blueprint for my daughter. Every single thing on there, for the most part, was there. And that's so often the case. It's often like a eureka moment when you stumble across what PDA is. And then suddenly it's like, that's the answer. That's what we've been worrying about all this time, or concerned or unable to identify all this time. So I'm going to go through the traits. I'm going to go through, these are the main traits that are associated. And it's important to note that with anything like this, as with any autistic person, no one size fits all. There will be specific traits that definitely relate and others that may not be quite so prevalent. So we'll go through those as we go through the list. So let's get started. So the first, and I'd say the key trait for anything to do with pathological demand avoidance, is the need to be in control. Now, this is really apparent with my daughter. So as I say, my daughter, whilst not having a PDA diagnosis, certainly is, it's listed on her autism diagnosis as PDA strategies will help. And this is something that really applies. My daughter needs to be in control. And this comes out in so many ways. So basically, the reason that this need for control exists is because PDA, like most forms of autism, is all to do with anxiety. And the very first episode I did, and I've talked about it a lot on other episodes, is this intrinsic link that exists between autism and anxiety. And in fact, a lot of mental health conditions, I'm not calling PDA or autism a mental health issue, but other mental health conditions, often come back to this underlying anxiety that exists. So for my daughter, she has this anxiety, and I've likened it before to the traffic light system. So just to briefly explain that, we all live in the green. So for myself, I don't suffer with anxiety. And for me, I live in the green most of the time. Life just goes on, I carry on. And occasionally things might get stressful. You might get annoyed by something might have happened, someone cuts you off. I don't know if you've experienced that. You know, all that kind of stuff. It seems to really come out for people who are driving. Certainly that's when my tensions rise, when you've got idiots around you. But yeah, you might click into the orange then. And if you click into the orange, you are still in control of your logic, if you like. So again, another example I've given in the past is this Spock, Kirk and the lizard, a Star Trek analogy, and it really helped me to understand it. So basically, Spock is your logic. He's at the front of the brain, and he's doing all the mathematical, just the logical processes. In the middle, we have Kirk. Kirk is Captain Kirk, obviously, and that's your emotional response. So that's, you know, how things make you feel internally. And then you have at the back your lizard, which is the fight, flight, or freeze. And these usually are working in conjunction with each other. So when we're in the green and the amber, they're all still present. And so even though I might be stressed and upset, my logic is still in place, and I will apply that to the situation. So I might be annoyed that someone's cut me off. Am I going to stop the car, get out and have a big fight? No, because my logic tells me that's just going to end badly, and what's the point? If we're particularly upset, we click into the red. And when we click into the red, that's when Spock, if you like, goes for a walk. So we're no longer applying logic in the same way. And it's just our emotions and our lizards, so our fight, flight, or freeze, which are in play. And that's when you get meltdowns. That's when you get people who overreact to something. So, you know, might punch a wall or shout at somebody, or, you know, any number of just things like run, like I say, flight, fight, or freeze. And you'll go through those different options. For people like my daughter, she appears to be functional most of the time, and she is, but that's because she's in the amber all the time. So unlike myself, she never dips to the green. She never gets to the point where she's not got that anxiety as an underlying thing. What that means is it only takes the smallest thing to click her over into the red, and that's why you get these sudden meltdowns. It feels like, where'd that come from? For her, for us, it looks like they've gone from 0 to 100 in no time at all. For her, she's been sitting on 80 quite comfortably for the last, few weeks, and suddenly, boom, here it comes, and that's the meltdown, because for her, it's only been a small increase in speed. That's what happens. A great way to manage this is to try and look for the triggers that are coming, and look for signs that things are coming, and try and keep Spock engaged. This was something a doctor told me early on when he recognized that my daughter was autistic. And it's been really helpful. There are times where if I can see the meltdown coming, if I can see the reactions coming, I then will stop and say, hey, think about what you're doing, okay? Is this going to work out well? Is this going to be something that you're going to be happy with at the end? Just by trying to engage that logic process again, it has helped on many occasions to stop us from getting into the red light and stop us getting into meltdowns and the aggressive behaviors that we certainly find accompanies it. So that need to be in control is a key thing. And basically everything that comes from here, to me, when you look at it, feeds back to that need for control. So PDA is all about that, because for her, being in control alleviates the anxiety. When you're anxious, if you're in control, it's something less to worry about. And that translates for my daughter into this demand avoidance. So if I say, go and clean your room, it creates a demand. In that, she will respond with, I'm not going to clean my room. She remains in control. She's in control of what she's going to do. And so I've learned over time, and it's a tricky thing because you've got to keep it sort of moving, if you like. My daughter cottons on pretty quickly, so what she would view as manipulations. But basically, rather than tidy your room, it's something like, where should we put this? What should we put away first? Giving her a sense of control within the required or desired outcome that I'm looking for. So I need her room clean. I need her to help me, or I need her to do it. So it's then presenting her with options that allow her that feeling of being in control whilst also achieving those goals. So as I say, for the next point, I think all this comes back to this need for control, this anxiety that's underneath. And what we get are explosive behaviors. Now, this is definitely the case for my daughter. And it's really challenging because there's part of me that knows she can't necessarily help it. There are times that she can. And that's a tricky thing you sort of have to learn to decipher is this one of those times that she's manipulating a situation, or is she genuinely just out of, hit that red zone, there's no logic and she can't control it. Interestingly, often when she's in control of it, it's something that she's playing on. So she might be playing up or looking like she's going to be aggressive purely because she's wanting to get out of doing something, which any kid would do. But often that can lead into the meltdown. If she then feels that sense of a loss of control, here come the explosive behaviours. My daughter can be very violent, she can be very aggressive. It's very, very challenging. And knowing the difference of when it's, genuine and not genuine, if you like, is really key, because she can't help these behaviours a lot of the time. And it can be really, really difficult for me personally. I mean, my daughter will say things to me that are just horrific, that no parent wants to hear from their kid. And she'll use words that she knows are shocking, but it's this instinctive thing. Again, it's back to this fight, flight, or freeze. She'll say things and do things and she will explode. She will be aggressive. She'll throw things. She might try and lash out. She'll kick, she'll bite, she'll scratch, she'll do whatever she can in that moment of complete, if you like, panic within herself. And it is purely that. And so you get these explosive behaviours, but again, it comes back to this feeling of control. When she feels that lack of control slipping, that's when we progress into these behaviours often, and these explosive behaviours that we're specifically talking about here. Keeping an eye for the signs, again, looking for triggers, looking for just the warning signs that are coming. And I can see it with my daughter, she might stim a little bit more. She might look more agitated. She'll get an expression on her face. We get it in, my kids love soft plays, both of my kids. My daughter loves soft plays. It's a great place for her to, in the UK, where it's raining 98% of the time, you need indoor play areas that are going to be effective. For my daughter, they're fantastic. But the increased sensory input that she gets there, the kids running around, there's lots of noise, there's bright lights, there's often game machines and claw machines and all this kind of stuff. And it's all this kind of sensory boom, 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 boom. And for her, it just builds and builds and builds to the point that she can't take it anymore. And I've learned to see the signs. You can see certain ways that she acts that are, okay, we need to get out and go for a walk now outside. The local soft play we have here have a nice garden area and we can go out there, or there's an outdoor play area. It's like, let's just get out to where it's maybe just a different environment, a different set of scene, and it really does help her. And there comes a point where it's like, we need to pack up and go now before something happens, because so many times I've had to apologise to other parents and just explain. And it gets tedious having to explain all the time, look, my daughter is autistic, she has this thing, and she finds it difficult to manage her emotional output. That's what leads to this, And I understand it from another parent's point of view. If someone was hitting my kid or someone was swearing at my child, I'd be upset about it too, and I'd want something done. It's just that sort of challenge of how to make that play and help them to understand what's really going on. Another key trait is slipping under the radar. Now, this sounds like an odd thing, and let me explain it. This is really educationally. So often kids who have PDA, or in fact, this goes for all forms of autism and for all autistic people in that way, often it slips under the radar. And this comes back to something I've talked a lot about on this channel, and that is masking. Masking is, in my opinion, probably the most damaging part of, because it's so misunderstood, so damaging to families. And the reason it's so, masking, to briefly, we can check it out, I've got a video I've done on masking, but to briefly explain it, masking is the process where school is a great example. It's not what you would consider for a child their safe place. So for autistic kids especially, when you go to school, it's, again, all that sort of sensory input and all that kind of stuff. It's a stressful place. But what they do is they bottle it. They don't want to appear out of place within the school. They want to appear like everybody else in their class. And so they repress it, they push it down, and it's likened to what we call the Coke bottle effect. I always want to do the hand motion of a shaking bottle, and it always looks really dodgy, so I'm going to avoid it on this one. I'm going to put a picture up of a Coke bottle being shaken. But that's what happens. So basically this bottle is shaking all day as they're repressing and continuing to repress these sensory overloads, this stress. It gets pushed down, and it goes all day until they get to their safe place. That's home, or when they're with a safe person, a parent, somebody who's picking them up, somebody they trust. And then when they get home, it's like taking the bottle off of, the lid off of the bottle that's been shaken all day, and boom, out it all comes. Masking causes so much damage because it causes this slipping under the radar. So schools don't see the behaviours that parents are talking about. Sadly, the way our diagnosis process works, especially in the UK, is that it takes a lot of feedback from schools So that feedback comes in that, oh, they're fine here. We're having no problems at all with little Angel. And so you get parent blame. And so it's, oh, well, clearly it's not a problem with the child. It's not, and when I say a problem, what I mean is it's not something that's going on within the child themselves. This is external, therefore it's bad parenting. Therefore you get put on parenting courses and you go through all sorts of time-wasting crap that just costs the system so much money. And it gets blamed on the parents, but what it's not doing is actually addressing what's going on. So my tip for whenever you're getting this experience, if you're not getting the backup, because what happens is the schools aren't seeing the behaviours, so it gets reported back that we're seeing the behaviours, so diagnosis goes out the window and you have to start the whole process again. My tip is always to keep your phone with you and just record stuff. Now, I don't mean necessarily video. Using a video is fine, but keeping it in a pocket. You don't want to antagonise a situation where a kid's suddenly got a camera thrust in their face. It's not fair to them, it's not fair to anything, and it's going to stop you being able, but being able to just flick on the video, put it in your pocket and record what's going on provides that evidence. So you're saying, well, okay, you might be getting this at school, this is what we're getting at home, and this is what's happening. And it provides the evidence of masking taking place. Masking is a really important thing to understand, and if you're in the education system, if you're a teacher, if you're a TA, if you're in any way involved in that, and in fact, if you're involved in the diagnosis process at any level and you don't understand masking yet, go and research it. Go and check the video I've done on it. Find out about masking, because you will save so many parents and families so much difficulty just by understanding and being able to look past, okay, in fact, see there's a reason why they're so good at school and why they're so challenging in the home environment. The next one, and again, this is one that certainly applies to my household, is threatening language. My daughter goes to a special educational needs school, and it's been absolutely fantastic. And one of the interesting things was when we went there, we had to have like a introduction interview and make sure that my daughter was the right fit for the school and it was going to be able to help her. And one of the things they said was, look, we warn you now, she's going to pick up some very unique and interesting phrases, and oh my gosh, were they right. Just the nature of the kids they have there, you get this language, and she's used words which horrify me, and I get really panicked that she's going to say them in public, and people are going to label me with some really nasty labels, and justifiably so, because they've heard my daughter use certain words which are so offensive. But you get this threatening language. It's not just bad words. It's not just, necessarily swearing or using offensive terms. It can just be in that threatening language. So my daughter will often say, I wish you were dead. I'll do this, I'll do that. It makes threats. So threatening language, in the fact that it is a threat of doing something harmful to somebody. Or, throwing something, trashing her room, doing whatever. She'll make these threats. And again, it comes back to this control. I am going to do this if you don't comply to my desires and needs. For example, so coming back to a bedroom as an example, you need to clean your room, it's getting filthy. No, I'm not going to do it. Well, you need to do it. You need to go clean your room, it's getting really messy. No, I'm not going to do it, not going to do it. You need to do it. And, again, I created the demand and I need to work a way around that rather than present with that, you need to clean your room now. Well, let's put it away first, let's have a look at this. Because she's in that frame of mind and she's clicking into that need for control, she'll then use threatening language to get out of it. I'm not going to do it. You make me do this, I'll do this. No. You want me to clean? I'm going to trash it more. Blah 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 blah. And you get this whole sense of threat and everything that goes along with that sort of threatening language that happens. She'll make these threats based on the fact she doesn't want to do it because that takes her out of being in control. And that's when you get the threatening language, and she will use every word under the sun and every threat under the sun to try and maintain that sense of control within her. And the next one's an interesting one, and it's a poor sense of self-esteem. Now this is an interesting one because if you look at my daughter, if you talk to her normally, she appears to have no self-esteem issues whatsoever. But as you peel away the layers a little bit, that's when you really find that actually there is a huge sense of low self-esteem. Now, this has come out more and more recently as we've hit adolescence. My daughter is expressing more and more how she feels about herself. She's become very aware that she's autistic. She's become aware that she's different from other people around her. And it's become a real issue for her. And we had the fantastic opportunity where we spoke to my good friend Tigger Pritchard, where my daughter actually interviewed him about coming to terms with being autistic and finding the joy and the positives that are in there. Fantastic stuff. Do watch it, because Tigger is amazing, and so proud of my daughter for doing it and being prepared to let me film it. But yeah, since she's started into the cycle of puberty and adolescence, it's coming out more and more, this low sense of self-esteem. And she'll say things to me that are just, I hate myself, I don't like myself, I'm an idiot. I just often these things, and I pick up on them, and I try not to make a big deal of it. One of those things is the temptation for me is to react, oh, don't be silly. Like, oh, no, you're not. Look at that. And I try and just switch to positive thinking. Look at all this. So, in fact, we had this just last night. My daughter was saying, I hate being autistic and I hate all this. And it's like, well, you should be proud of who you are. And I just went on to list all the amazing things I think there are about her. I said, you're really caring, you look out for other people. When you see an opportunity to be nice, you do the best things, and you do these things. And we had this the other day, it was a little while back now, but my daughter had come out, we'd just come out from Tesco, and there was a homeless man just sitting there. And she just got herself a treat. So she'd been good that day, and I'd bought her it was just a bar of chocolate. We get sugar-free chocolate, and it was a sugar-reduced chocolate. She had it. And she saw this guy sitting there, and she was so touched. And she just took a bar of chocolate, went over and gave it to him, and then walked away. And it just really blew my mind. And she has that in her. And it's those things, being able to recall those stories to her. I just try and use the positives. You've done these amazing things. And I'll talk about amazing people who are autistic. And I did a video on, people who are amazing and autistic. And, my latest one is Dan Harmon, the creator of Community and Rick and Morty. He's an autistic man, and his stuff is just so good. And so I use these examples of people who are amazing and have done amazing things actually due to their autism. When I spoke to on the Grumpy Dads, the link will be here, myself and Chris interviewed Bobby, who is a race driver, and he fully believes, and I tend to agree with him, that his skills with the car are actually due to his autism. So being autistic, he's able to process things in a different way and faster. So when he's coming up to a corner, he can make all these adjustments and stuff that other people wouldn't consider or wouldn't consider as quickly. But his autism, his hyper-focus, if you like, at that point, just helps it, and boom, he's there. Amazing. If you do go check it out, he's a bit of an inspiration. So when my daughter's in that frame of mind, I try and use those positive comebacks and talk to her about how amazing she is and bring that back. But that underlying sense of poor self-esteem is definitely something that accompanies my daughter. That really does lead into the next one, which is an expressed desire to be equal or better than others. Now, I really see this with my daughter, and we see it particularly, we don't see it so much now in games because she's reached an age where, playing games, as in sort of role play almost, aren't there so much. She's moved on from that. But she, when she was, you could really see it in the sense that when she'd play with my son, and they'd play schools, she would have to be the teacher. You would see it in, any of those things. She'd always take on a parent, teacher, a role of someone in charge. Again, this focus is back on that need for control. By playing the role of somebody who's in charge and in control, she's allowing herself that comfort, which goes to alleviating that internal anxiety. So this expressed desire to be equal, and it often leads into other things which will come up as we go on with other traits. But that's certainly something that's really linked. And again, it links to that need for control, but it also links back to that sense of low self-esteem. So the fact that she feels down about herself, she elevates herself when she can by expressing this need to be equal to or better than others. The next one is one that I really struggle with because I see this in my daughter tremendously, and it breaks my heart. And that is the desire to have friendships, but inadvertently sabotaging any friendship she has. This comes back into all the other traits that we talked about so far, really. My daughter is a social person. She actually loves having people around. Again, one of those things that goes against a lot of stereotypical views of autism. My daughter's actually very social. She wishes she had friends. She has people which are acquaintances, or she's got school friends, if you like, but she doesn't see them outside of school. She doesn't have that kind of relationship with them. They're there in school as a necessity of the people around her, but they're not really people that she has a more intimate style of friendship with them. It doesn't move beyond that kind of acquaintance stage, if you like. She really wishes she had friends, but what she does is that when she gets a friend, she gets really full on with it. But you also get in these other traits we talked about, this need for control, the desire to be equal to or better than. You get the explosive behaviours. You get all these things starting to factor in, and it really affects how people respond to her. And in the end, it's just too much, the too hard basket. And so they eep off, and it happens very quickly. When we go to soft play, going back to that sort of thing, my daughter loves to run around and play chase games with the other kids that are there. She'll be a monster, or again, control. She'll always be the the chaser. But they play these chase games, and everyone loves it for 20 minutes, half an hour. But then the game shifts. They want to do something else. They want to play some other kind of game. But when that happens, she can't really adapt. She feels a sense of that loss of control. It leads to explosive behaviours. And straight away, that friendship's gone. So whatever friendship was starting to cement there, it's just destroyed because she's self-sabotaged. And it's really hard, and it's something she can't control. And it really plays on the heartstrings, because all I want for my daughter is to have a really good friend, someone she can confide in and have that intimacy of relationship. And I really hope that happens at some point soon for her. Another one, and this is certainly true again for my daughter, is an ambivalence to success. And it plays into an ambivalence to enjoyment as well. She will feel proud for a few moments if she's done something. If she's achieved something at school, she's done a good picture, she will bring it home and it's like, hey, I did this. And it's like, oh, that's fantastic. Let's stick it on the fridge, do all the, the bits. If you ever watched The Australian Castle, the film The Castle, brilliant film. It's going straight to the pool room.
This is going straight to the pool room.
You'll only understand that if you've seen it. But it's that kind of thing of, celebrate it. Yeah, let's put it on the fridge. Let's make a big deal of this. It'll last for a couple of minutes and then she's moved on. She finds it very hard to really care about that. And it's why things like reward charts just don't work for my daughter. You might put that reward up. She doesn't really care because she can't process it beyond the next couple of minutes. So a long-term reward chart just doesn't work. If we do this for a week and you keep putting things up every time they've done something good until they've achieved their goal at the end of the week, it doesn't work because she can't really factor in anything that far down the track, but she doesn't really care. She likes the reward in that moment, so we use a lot of immediate rewards. That was really good, here's a treat. That immediate reward really helps. She can identify it immediately and it leads to more positive results for her as well. But yeah, that ambivalence to success, and it often comes across, it's like, I just don't care. Definitely something that accompanies my daughter. This one is an interesting one in that it's a lack of permanence and transfer within the education system. This really comes back to this whole thing of masking again, but it's often that it's the other way. So it's that they can't mask. So my daughter masks, but she can only hold the mask for so long before it just becomes too much. If you're familiar with masking, it's exhausting for the people who do it, adults and kids alike. I've spoken to a number of people who talk about it. When you're masking consistently, it takes so much energy. And so my daughter can't maintain it for very long. There's just so much anxiety built up in there that it has to come out eventually, even in a school setting. And so she becomes explosive at that point. What often happens is that these behaviours lead to exclusions, lead to permanent exclusions, and so you get this sort of transfer in setting. It's often something that's subtle and unnoticed as being part of PDA, but it's something that definitely leads back into it's an example of something that occurs quite often with kids who are PDA, and it certainly happened with my daughter, where we've gone through a couple of schools before we finally found a SEND school that was suitable and was a godsend, made an absolute difference to her. She's just so much better off there for what she needs. Definitely something that's a key part of it. So the next one is really a summary of everything that we've got, and that is a sense of very poor emotional regulation. This really comes back, it ties in with explosive behaviours, it ties in with the threatening language, and it certainly ties into that need to be in control. As I explained, it's this level of anxiety that's inside, and once that tips over, you get these, what we consider to be overreactions, and this feeling of going from 0 to 100 in no time at all. the fact that this anxiety is always at play means that it only takes something small. So I liken it to a glass that's just, we've all got an emotional glass within us, and it sort of fills and empties as the day goes on. If we're excited, it fills with excitement. If we're angry or frustrated, it fills with that. If it's, just a sense of tension that's there, people around you and stuff like that, it all sits there and fills up this glass. And as we go on, we empty the glass and we do things that might help. We might go shopping or swimming or exercise, listen to music, and they help me. For me, music really brings down that emotional glass and helps me to regulate myself. For my daughter, that glass is nearly always very close to full. So it only takes the smallest amount to go in there and it all drips over, all comes pouring over the side. And for her, that's exactly what's happening. And that's why you get this poor sense of emotional regulation. It's because they've already been dealing with so much emotion already and trying to contain it, that it only takes something very small and it triggers into the behaviours we've discussed and the traits we've discussed. Now, the next one, certainly the case that I had to learn very early on, was the variability in behaviour. Now, what this is that we go through periods where everything's hunky-dory and you think we've really cracked it, we've done something here and everything's going really well. We haven't had any meltdowns. She seems a lot more positive in herself. She's going through, fantastic stuff. And you're thinking, I think we've cracked it this time. We've had the school come back to us and say, hey, difference over the last couple of weeks has been amazing. Something is going really right. I've learned to sort of nod sagely and say, just wait, because I know it's coming. And that it's that full sense of security you get lulled into, and it happens for my daughter, on a regular basis. It's almost cyclic, if you like. She will go through a period where everything's hunky-dory, but that's actually a warning sign to me that we're probably stepping into something that's going to be a challenging period. And for me, I think it comes back into this whole thing of masking. There are periods where she's able to mask more effectively, and they can be sustained, but they can only be sustained for so long before that mask drops, and that's when we click into the challenging behaviours that are associated. The final one, and it's something that was certainly true for my daughter as she's got older and she's moved into adolescence, it's something that has reduced considerably, and that is the extensive involvement with role play and fantasy. I'm not talking about the board games. What I'm talking about here is the general type of play that she would used to engage in as a child, as a younger child. As I said before, it's things like playing teachers, playing schools, playing home, mum and dad, all that kind of stuff, and putting herself in always that elevated position. But it was something that was definitely there, not as strongly as it is for some kids now. This is for me one of those things that can be there, can very easily not be there. I know of a lot of kids who would qualify as PDA who don't go through that side of things. In fact, it can be the opposite. They don't get involved in role play or fantasy at all. It's that side of things. So, with a number of autistic people and kids, where you might play with your toys. So my son will play with his Transformers or his toys, his Marvel figures and stuff like that. Lego, he'll play with them and play games and stuff like that. That fantasy and role play that's within there, that kind of creative play. My daughter was never really into that. She never really played with toys. She had them there. They were a comfort, but they were never something that she'd interact with in that way. So what you get is this situation where really it can be something that's involved, and it's certainly a trait when it's there. It's also something that I think can easily be not present, but not take away from the overall package of being PDA. So that is the basic list of the traits that are associated with pathological demand avoidance. As I say, no one size fits all. And you're very rarely going to get a child that fits every single, ticks every box on the list, if you like. My daughter exhibits a lot of them, and I tend to find that when parents come across PDA, if their kids are pathologically demand avoidant, then it is something that a lot of the ticks will be there. So you'll get it does read like a blueprint, and I've said that before. It's like looking at it, it's like this is a map for my child, and it's almost like you wrote it about my child. It's certainly how I felt for my daughter when we first discovered it. It was like, this is her. Did you meet her and put down everything about her? Because that's what it's like. And that seems to be something that happens a lot. If you are looking for support with PDA, PDA Society are absolutely fantastic. They were very helpful to us in the early days, especially of getting diagnosis and all that kind of stuff. But certainly in learning how to deal with the challenging side of PDA as a parent and parenting PDA. It can be a really challenging thing. We had to essentially relearn parenting from the ground up once we knew what we were dealing with, because traditional parenting techniques usually don't work in these situations. You have to adapt very, very heavily to the needs of we had to adapt very heavily to the needs of my daughter. And that really comes back to meeting my daughter where she's at, not where I want her to be, if that makes sense. And it comes into this whole thing of, adapting our life to support her, not expecting her to change who she is to fit in with us. It was a big thing. And being able to approach my daughter in that way and adapt our parenting style to support her better was key. PDA Society were fantastic with that. There are lots of groups online. I do recommend the PDA Space, run by Nicola Ricci, who I've interviewed on this channel previously. A lot of really positive support on that Facebook page, and also my page on Facebook as well. It's more of a broad support group for parents who have kids who are neurodiverse. And there's lots of support out there in the community, and you can get it, but I do recommend get in touch with the PDA Society. They will be very, very helpful. Thanks so much for joining me. As always, please do hit like, hit subscribe, and ring the bell so that you know when we've got new content coming up. It really does help with algorithms with YouTube and put this information out there to the parents and people who may need to hear it. I'd love to hear your feedback. If you've got kids that you think are maybe have PDA and are looking to support them better, please do chuck it in the comments. I do try to respond to everything. If you've got any tips and advice on how you deal with your kids who are diagnosed or do have PDA, whether it's diagnosed or not, being that only 30% of the country will actually diagnose it, please chuck it in the comments. We'd love to hear the feedback, and I can put all of the feedback and comments that come into another episode, which would be to do with life hacks. We've done one before, and life hacks for living with PDA and supporting PDA kids where they're at. I will see you again on the next episode. In the meantime, stay safe and have a great week.